Alan here for Old English Outfitters YouTube channel. So we're back to looking at concealed carry handguns, and one of the newest ones that's shown up on the market is this, the FN 503. Now, a lot of you are familiar with FN, Fabrique Nationale out of Belgium. They have made military firearms forever. Fabrique Nationale was associated with Browning. John Browning went to them and they made a lot of his designs. And over the years, they've made lots and lots and lots of military grade weapons. And here in the good old US of A, they make a lot of pistols. They've got some double stack guns that are both hammer fired double action and striker fired. One of the unique things about some of their bigger guns is they tend to be pretty right or left-handed friendly. A lot of ambidextrous control, which is a nice thing. FN got into the really small concealed carry market with this just recently, the 503. Now this is empty and safe. I'm going to close the slide for a minute. This gun's pretty small. It's about the same footprint roughly as a Smith & Wesson Shield or similar single stack magazine guns, Springfield XDS, things like that. It's according to the manual, it's 1.1 inches wide, so it's pretty, or thick, I guess I should say. It's pretty thin. It feels pretty thin in the hand. If you look at the profile, it looks kind of flat and kind of squarish, which it is. But it doesn't feel bad in the hand. It does have a pretty short grip on it. With no magazine in it, my little finger, and I don't have really big hands, really doesn't get on there. So it is pretty small. For a 9mm, it might be fairly pocketable. 21 ounces is what it weighs, so it's not super lightweight. Comes with, in the box, a nice little soft case, little soft zipper case. Comes with that. Comes with 2 magazines. A 6-rounder that has a small extension on it. If we put the 6-rounder in it, it gives me a reasonable anchor. We're still a little bit short, but it's not bad. Gives you a reasonable anchor for your small finger. And then we've got an 8-rounder that has a pretty good extension. That gives you a pretty good full grip. The 8-rounder has a sleeve to make up the distance so that you got a full grip feel to it. This sleeve's pretty good. If you've handled some of these guns with sleeves on them, sometimes you know the sleeve starts to get a little loose, starts moving up and down a little bit. Once in a while you'll pinch yourself. It's a little annoying. This sleeve's on there pretty solidly. And it's going to take a long time for that thing to wear out, I think, where it moves very much. So pretty solidly built there. It will move. You can't slide it, but it's on there pretty good. So that's a good thing. I like that. One other thing that this gun comes with, other than a manual, of course, is a different magazine release. Because you can change the magazine release if you're left-handed, reverse it to the other side, but you need this magazine release to do that. This pistol is, like some other things these days, kind of modular. FN says that you can drive the pins out, take the chassis, that's the actual serialized gun, out of the frame, and you can change frames. So presumably you can change to other colors. Not sure about other sizes. That might depend on what FN has in mind. As it comes, there's no modularity to this frame. It is checkered, and they've got their own kind of pattern of checkering. It's not bad. It's around the back here, and it's around the front. All important in the front. Nice in the side there. Magazine release, pretty accessible. It's got a protected little fence sort of around it there that kind of protects that magazine release so that you're not going to accidentally bump it. One thing that's kind of interesting about this, some of these really small guns don't have much in the way of a slide stop or a slide release. Now, as you know, most modern training technique teaches you to reach for the slide, not for the slide release. However, some of these things have such a small slide release that you couldn't reach for it anyway. This one's very, very rounded, and it's kind of smallish, but it works pretty well. I was able to manipulate it with my shooting hand thumb without any trouble. Shooting impressions on this thing. Not bad. Points very well. When you bring it up, particularly at speed, it points nice and straight. Your sights come right up where you want them to be. Recoil very manageable. And again, at 21 ounces unloaded, it's not super light. So when you shoot it, recoil was pretty manageable with it, as you'll see when you see us shooting it. Sights were true. Shot right onto where we were aiming. So no issues there. The sights are dovetailed in, so you could drift them if you needed to adjust for windage. No real way to adjust for elevation built into it as it is. Pretty sturdy little pistol, built nicely. As far as another thing with regard to shooting impressions on it, again, if you look at the grip, it's kind of flat and squarish, and if you just look at it, you almost think this is not going to be very comfortable to shoot. It really wasn't bad at all. The texturing on it is not overly aggressive, so when we were shooting it, it wasn't painful, didn't bother you at all. You could shoot it all day. It's not going to beat you up. Felt recoil reminded me a little bit of a Smith & Wesson Shield, and that's a pretty soft shooting, smaller 9mm. This one might be just a tad smaller than a Shield in terms of grip height and things like that. Like most striker-fired guns, which is what this is, you've got an internal firing pin lock, you've got a internal disconnector, and you got the little trigger piece on the trigger. So then the common 3 safeties that you see in weapons like this. So you can't move the trigger unless you pull the whole thing. FN advertises this as the best-in-class trigger. It's okay. It is very similar to some of the other striker-fired triggers out there. The specifications on it says that the trigger is 5 to 7 pounds. We didn't put a trigger gauge on it. I didn't think it was terribly heavy. If it's more than 5, it's not hugely more than 5. A lot of these types of weapons running at 5.5 to 6 range, that's probably where this was. But it was a pretty easy shooting little pistol. When it comes to maintenance for this thing, maintenance is very much like many other semi-auto type pistols, okay? Takedown's a little different. It's similar to a lot of other guns out there, but especially when you put it back together, it's just slightly different. So we're going to show you. First thing, what do we do? First thing, what do we do? Make sure it's empty and safe. Magazine out, check the chamber in that order, right? We make sure everything's safe. Then we're going to close the slide on this. Then what we got to do is we got to back up to that post right there. We got to pull this dude back because we've got, I'm going to have to move this, Tristan, so I can see where it's at. We got to get it about right there because there's a piece on the back side of this that's got to line up with that, okay? Very easy to not get it. And then we're going to get this started. Once we get it started, this will come up a little bit, and we can let that forward, and it'll pull right out. There's the slide stop. From this position, it's not going to come off. We got to make sure we got to pull the trigger, and that lets the slide come off the frame. By the way, there's that internal chassis that's removable. You can drive the pins out, take the whole thing out. Captured recoil spring and guide, and barrel. So we end up with the same types of components we end up with most things, with one exception, and that's this. Okay? Ready? So we're going to go to the putting it back together stage. Barrel slides back in. Recoil spring and guide slides back in, just like everything else. Slide and barrel assembly goes back on the frame, just like everything else. To that point right there, now we're going to stop for a second because we got that little bitty spring. You can see it if you look in there. And on here, on this side of this, there's a little cutout right there. That cutout's got to mate that spring. So if we put this so it's oriented like so, back that up just slightly, that will slide in there. It won't slide in if you try to come from any other angle. So then we want to rotate this back around. We got to move this back so that notch lines up with that piece right there on the slide stop. And then we can get it over here. And where I can see what I'm doing. Push it in. Then we function check. Works. Okay? If you back the slide up too far and you push your slide stop pin in, what's going to happen is the whole thing's going to stop about right there when you close. It's not going to close all the way. So if you do that, you just got to take the slide stop out, start over. If you put it in upside down, you have to back it up very much, just like we showed you, so that thing sticks, the slide stop lever, that is sticking this way. When you get started, then you can rotate it around. So it's not too bad. You do it a couple times, you'll have it down. Not a big deal, but slightly different than a lot of other things that we've seen out there, okay? Once again, just to recap. Nice, slim, single-stack 9mm pistol, 6-round magazine, which is going to keep it pretty small. 8-round magazine, be a good reload to carry with you, or obviously if you're going to the range or something like that. This thing with the small magazine in it might be pocketable for some people. Now, you start getting into that 21 ounce range and above, pocket carry starts to get a little problematic just because it's heavy. It feels like a brick in your pocket, right? That's where the small 380s and things like that come in if that's what you want to do. But for some people, in some circumstances, depending on how you're wearing, what you're doing, things like that, might be okay in a pocket. Not a bad little gun. We've got them. They are, how much, right? $479.99 plus tax, of course. We got a couple of these. Not a bad shooting little pistol. Again, just to mention it, it pointed very well. We had no trouble right off the bat hitting our steel plates, and we usually shoot it around, I don't know, a little more, somewhere between 20 and 30 feet is usually about where we start. Had no trouble hitting the steel plates at all with it. So pretty shootable little gun. If you're an FN fan, this might be worth a look for you. It also might be worth a look for you if you handle a variety of things and you say, you know what, hey, I really like that. That feels best to me. So we've got them. Come take a look. Of course, right now we're in the appointment only stage. You can give the shop a call. We can set up an appointment time for you to come in, at least until we get all of this badness with the coronavirus over. Okay? All right. Well, that's all I got for right now. Appreciate you watching. Until next time, I'm Alan for Old English. Thank you.